All right, and welcome back to the Group Project Podcast. I have a very special guest. Nicole Johnson is the principal at Waukee Elementary, and she has been there for the last 12 years. And so I've had a lot of fun kind of talking to her before the show about what that's been like. But hey, welcome to the show, and I hope you're having a great day to start here.
Thanks so much for having me. I am, and I'm just really excited about the opportunity to be a part of this conversation.
So tell me, we talked a lot before. I feel like we probably could have recorded exactly like the first 15 minutes before we got started and had our podcast there. But tell me about your career path at Waukee. You've been there for your whole educational career. So share a little bit about that. Share about whatever you want in terms of giving us context about your leadership position.
Absolutely. Um, I have spent my entire educational career thus far in Waukee, and I feel really fortunate to have had that opportunity. I got my very first teaching job here in the district. I was a kindergarten teacher at Waukee Elementary back when there were 3 elementary schools. For context, we now have 9, and soon we'll open the 10th. And so, I taught kindergarten in the district, and our buildings were large at that time. And 3 years into teaching, a 4th building was opening, and we did this thing that we do always in Waukee. There was an opportunity for some people to stay at Waukee Elementary, and some people needed to move to the new building. And I ended up going to that new building, which turned out to be beneficial. I got to watch the process of opening a brand new school, and 1 year later, had finished up my master's at Drake and was able to interview for an assistant principal job in the district, and got that position serving as a shared assistant principal across 2 really large elementaries, Walnut Hills and Waukee Elementary. So I went back part-time to Waukee Elementary, and 2 years later, had the most amazing opportunity of my professional career, thus far, which was to be the principal, here at Waukee Elementary. And that's what I've been doing for the last 12 years. So 18 years and counting, all in Waukee.
That's awesome. So now you mentioned the large schools. Give me an idea. How many students and staff do you have at Waukee Elementary?
Yeah, so this past school year, we had about 710 students in a K-5 building, and we are one of 9 elementaries, and they all run in that neighborhood. Just given some of the different building sizes and our neighborhoods, fluctuating, it could be anywhere from 600 to 750 across the district. But 710 students here at Waukee Elementary, and about 80 staff members. About 60 of those are certified staff, and another 20 to 25, depending on the year, would be classified.
And you mentioned before, and I won't dig into this right now, I might come back to it later, but you mentioned that this will be the first year of your 12, you just finished up your 12th year, your first year where you actually don't have to hire a certified staff member for next year. That's like unheard of. That is incredible. What's the word? Low turnover rate. I don't know what word I'm looking for exactly, but that's really good. People must like working there, it sounds like.
I believe that that's true, and I believe that's because of just the amazing team that we have assembled, that is Waukee Elementary. And it's super unique in Waukee, being the fastest growing district in the state. It's unheard of, really, so far for me, not to have some type of certified hiring in spring. So
well, I might come back to that because
okay.
In terms of, well, I'll come back to that here a little bit later, but I do want to start off with a question we've done the last 2 episodes. And it's kind of getting to know your area a little bit better. If I were coming to Waukee or just the Metro Des Moines area, and a lot of people listening to this go to Des Moines, whether it's for State Fair or the SAI conference or a concert at Wells Fargo, whatever it might be, where's the place you would recommend for to get some food? What would you recommend? Where's your favorite spot?
Um, those that know me best would know I'm not necessarily a foodie. However, I do enjoy going lots of different places. And sometimes I think that it's most interesting to go places that are not the most well known, like the chains, and don't get me wrong, there's great things about those restaurants, but it's fun to find and try new places. And so one of our more recent finds is El Guapo, and it's located on University. I suppose their technical address is West Des Moines, but it's right near, just to the west of Des Moines Golf. So,
Okay. Okay.
and it's like an authentic Mexican, restaurant, and lots of things are made right there, in-house, and it's fresh, and just the vibe is like, if you wanted to dress up and have that type of a night out, you could, but you can also kind of come as you are. They have indoor, outdoor seating, and just the staff is really friendly and fun to chat with if you happen to like eat up at the bar or something like that. So,
So if you go to a Mexican restaurant, like where they're always pretty big menus usually, like what is the one area you kind of focus in on?
well,
What's your go-to?
my go-to. I am a vegetarian and I also eat gluten-free. And so that automatically points me to certain parts of the
Sure,
menu.
sure, sure, sure.
um, but I love a good corn tortilla, or chips and guac is totally my first go-to. And that's usually the deciding factor on if this is a great restaurant or not for Mexican food.
Well, I think that's what a lot of people say is, well, at least when my wife and I go to eat, it's like, well, do they have good chips and salsa?
Oh,
That's
so
always the first question. So,
it's
so
so
El
important.
Guapo's got great chips and guac, it sounds like. Is
Yes.
that correct?
They do. They do. And
Okay.
they have a really unique cactus based taco. And I know that
Oh.
it sounds really interesting, and it is, but it's worth trying.
Okay. All right. I'm writing that down. I will link El Guapo
Yeah.
down in the notes. I don't know if anybody looks at the notes ever. If you're out there and you're listening, I do that. And if nobody looks, I will stop. But I will put El Guapo on University on the line of West Des Moines in the notes there.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is, what is the best $50 purchase you have made in the last 6 months? And it could be personal or professional. Now, if you have your answer, great. I'm
Mhm.
trying to get people to talk about like gadgets or
Mhm.
things that help with them with productivity or habits. If you have that, great. If not, go with what you got. But that's what I'm trying to get to.
I I'm not as much of a gadgety person, so I don't know. I keep that pretty simple. I mean, my
Sure,
phone houses so many of the things that help me with
sure,
productivity, like my calendar and the notes section and the reminders and
sure,
all of
sure.
those things. Um, so I probably don't have a recommendation
That's fine.
for
I
that.
kind of put you on the spot. Why don't you go
Yeah.
back to what you
No,
had
good.
planned?
Um, what I had made a note about is that we purchased here more in like the last 3 months a set of DVDs that of The Big Bang Theory, so that we could binge watch those episodes as a family during this time, where we've been at home. And that was one particular show that everybody was interested in, but it's not as readily available, online and those things. And so I don't buy a lot of DVDs anymore, but that was well worth it. And it's been fun to just cruise through. Some of our kids have gotten into the Young Sheldon version of that, the newer spin-off of one of the characters as a young child. And so then there became this discussion of like, well, there's the rest of the story that lives in, the Big Bang Theory. And so that's
Sure,
been kind of fun to
sure.
do together. And
So you mentioned your kids. Why don't you go ahead and let the audience know you've got you've got kind of a range of ages of kids. Why don't you go ahead, because I agree. I think Big Bang Theory, having watched a handful of episodes, would be perfect for kind of all ages. So
Yes. Yeah.
share that real quick.
Yeah. So, my husband and I have a blended family, and we have two sons and two daughters together. I had two children and he had two. My son is just finished his senior year at Waukee, and he's a product of Waukee K-12, is graduating and headed to Iowa State this fall. And then we have a soon to be ninth grader, another son who will be finishing up at an 8-9 building in the district. And so two freshmen next year, but two different levels of freshmen. And then we have two daughters who are actually both sixth graders. So 12, almost 13, that age range. And they're in our 6-7 buildings. And
Okay.
so, yeah, we have a large footprint here across the district,
Sure.
and lots of teens and tweens, and we're enjoying this season of life with them for sure.
Well, I'm going to take the DVD as a gadget. That counts in my mind. Do you guys have a DVD player? Did you have to get it out of the basement, or did you have it ready to roll there?
We do have one that is hooked up, so we were able to use it. But I would be scared to think about how old that actually is, and I'm hopeful that it continues to work, because it's not something we use a lot. But
Sure. We talked before the show, and I looked at the bio from the Waukee website, and I believe you graduated from UNI in 2002.
yes,
I graduated 2004, and I remember at UNI I got my first ever DVD player. When I was living in my apartment. I was like, oh my God, it was probably 2003. But it's not, honestly, it's not that long ago. But that's just, it's crazy how things have changed, for sure.
It is interesting that high technology it has become fairly low tech in
Yeah.
such a short amount of time.
Yeah. So we will count that as a gadget. I apologize for putting you on the spot.
No, you're good.
That's really cool. So, hey, let's move on here. What is one book that has changed or influenced your life?
It was difficult for me to stick with one. So I'm going to start with one, and then I'm going to add just a little bit. A book that I read when I was first working on my master's at Drake is called The Serving Leader by Ken Jennings. And it's actually written in the form of a parable. So it's less of a researchy book and more, told in a story format. And that book spoke to me because it was the first time that I really thought about leadership in different ways than some of those traditional, kind of top down, theories that were mostly what I knew about, going in to working on a program all about leadership and educational leadership. And I knew I wasn't comfortable with that, but I didn't really know how to frame my thinking in a different way. And so his book really talks about, upending a pyramid is something that he speaks to, that helps you get away from, thinking about leadership as a top down, and really it puts the leader, at the bottom of that pyramid. And some of the key things that I think spoke to me then, I'm very much a results oriented person, which makes it tempting to jump to purpose and jump to action and jump to, data and results, and those things are important and they have a place. But he speaks about, people, and really finding the right people, building on their strengths, setting barriers aside, removing roadblocks, and having high expectations then, and running to or towards a great purpose. But really, it starts with people. And that resonated with me because in addition to being a results oriented person, I am also a people person. And it helped me start to make sense of how does that all fit together, and how do you not jump too quickly to the results, the action, the world's best vision and mission statement can be, written perfectly, posted in the most, beautiful format, with graphic design and all of those features, t-shirts, tattoos, whatever. But it doesn't mean anything if you haven't assembled the right people, with the right gifts and strengths, and empowered that whole group to be moving towards something common. And so that book spoke to me. And then as, I encountered other research, you see where that fits in, right? So, because you need more than a good parable to build your, leadership framework around. And so then two others, I think that attach to that or have attached to that for me would be Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that has been life-changing for me, both personally and professionally. That gets at like a method and a process for building leadership and helping people access their strengths and build on their strengths. And then another one more recently that we have used in our work that fits in there is when you are getting ready to talk about having high expectations and running towards great purpose, how do you do that? That sounds great, but Simon Sinek's Start With Why has been a great anchor tool for us, that if you can keep things specific and succinct and build a common understanding around why you're going to do something, how, develop together as a team, how we're going to go about that work, and then really get to the work or the what, that can be really beneficial, especially in education, in this line of work. There are so many great things and so many, we have a lot of autonomy, and so you can take, many different approaches. And so when you pick something, making sure that it fits with your purpose, fits with your why, if you can answer that question, the work just becomes that much more meaningful.
So there's probably like 20 things I could have followed up on with what you shared. Here's the one thing I focused in on with your first book, The Serving Leader, was finding the right people. Okay, so this is the question I wanted to ask, and you totally opened the door for me, so I'm going to take it. Is when I go to job fairs and I recruit to our school district, I am always so jealous of Waukee and Ankeny and Southeast Polk, because there's like people lined up, like 50 people in a line. So here's my question to you is, I imagine you have a lot of people who apply for your jobs when they become open, because we all know I was in the same boat. Like when I graduated college, I wanted to go to where there was stuff to do, people to meet, restaurants like we talked about, El Guapo. But how do you, when you're finding the right people, like you probably have 6 rock stars that walk through your door for those interviews. Like, how do you find the right people? Like, what are you looking for? Because you're probably going to get a lot of outstanding interviews. What sets certain people, how do you find the right people for your building?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, there's just like there would be anywhere, there are some, consistent things that we know we're looking for. We want to be hiring people that have a strong foundation in, instruction and assessment and a solid understanding, and in some cases experience with, and in some cases, we're hiring people that haven't had that experience. Our interview process includes an opportunity to interview with a team. So I don't conduct interviews alone by any means. It's typically people from that team, that PLC, that we're looking to add to or fill a position with. And, then it's an opportunity to teach, in front of students, with students, if we can. We have a chance to tour our building, and typically that's led by students. And I get some feedback from students on those tours, and it's a chance, for the candidate to also be thinking about if this is the right fit for them, because not only do we want to be looking for a good fit, it needs to go both ways. But I think really, at the end of the day, as you mentioned, we can have several candidates that do really well with all those different components and have a strong foundation, and experiences. And I think what we talk about in that process at Waukee Elementary is, if that's the case, how can we think about who will make us better? So who is bringing something to our team, our building team, a grade level team, a related arts team, that we don't have? And how do we round out teams with, not 5 of the same personality, but 5 people with different gifts and different strengths? And that ends up being a question. And my instructional coach and I, we talk about that. And with that interview team, we're asking that question in many cases: who will make us better? If these things are somewhat equal or similar, who stands out in that way? Because we know that we're never done learning, and that we can always get better.
Okay. I love that. I wrote that down. Who will make us better? I like just having that. Sometimes you just have to have that 1 or 2 questions you can ask an interview committee that just like forces their hand a little bit to give you an authentic answer. Do you feel like usually and this is always tricky for me, do you feel like usually your committee is pretty much in unison, or is it, how do you navigate that? Or does it usually kind of work out well? Does the best person kind of rise to the top?
It varies. And some of that depends on the personality of the team too. Some teams are a little bit more in unison than others, or, kind of what season of life in working together that team is in. But I do think that if you have the right processes in place where, all members of an interview committee have a chance to get down their thoughts individually first about somebody's strengths, questions they still have, and then you process those things together, you're more likely than not to come to some common thoughts about what would be best for that team. And if you are a little bit divided, I think that's where some of those follow-up deeper questions can come, of like, who would make us better? Who would bring something to your team that you don't already have, so that you don't run the risk of just hiring more people that are exactly like the people that you already have.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes that is what then pushes, certain members or a whole team towards like, what, you're right, I could see this being really good for us. I'm excited to learn more about what this person said about, XYZ. And I think they might challenge our thinking, and we never want to continue to just do things the way that we always have, just because we've always done them that way, if there's something better.
Sure. I'm excited for this next question, which is your best culture hack. I feel like you've got a bunch, just kind of getting to know you, and just kind of some of your philosophical ideas you shared. So what is the one best culture hack that you have either used or seen in the school setting?
I would start by saying that culture is key, and that relationships are the foundation of any successful team, large or small. And in order to build those relationships and maintain those relationships, you are constantly making, deposits in that emotional bank account that you have with each other. And finding ways to make deposits, I think as leaders it's one of our greatest challenges, because we tend to sometimes maybe just do the things that would be a deposit for us, as an individual based on your own personality. And so I think thinking outside the box and thinking about all members of your team and really thinking about what is the best way to, make deposits and build relationships and keep our culture strong is ongoing. And sometimes I ask for feedback, like, how would you want to be recognized, or what is something that feels good in our team and when we get together. So those things are all really helpful. I would say one of the best things that we've added in the last couple of years it's a culture hack is called the Crushing It cart. So I actually attended a session at SAI at their summer conference a few years ago with a professional who talked about, just recognizing people that are crushing it. And you mentioned him, I think, when we were speaking beforehand, Joe Sanfilippo. So he talks about finding ways, small and large, to recognize people that are crushing it, that are doing a great job day in and day out. And so I think, like anything, you have to take great ideas and then think about, what does that look like for you? What works for you and for your team? And so I have a shopping cart from a Doll's grocery store that was donated to our building. And I love the shopping cart. But I added some signs to the outside of the shopping cart that say "crushing it," and there's like an image of a little guy that's holding his fist up, to show that he's crushed it. And on like teacher work days, or a random, maybe early out day, or a time when that people just might need a little pick me up, we fill that cart with little bags of popcorn and, candy to dump in your popcorn, and cans of Crush pop, and then other soda or water and those kinds of things. And then I set up a Bluetooth speaker in the front tray and play really loud music and head out. Yes, this is the Crushing It cart. So my assistant principal, instructional coach, secretary, kind of whoever's available will go around the building. And we literally blare the music, and people will come out of their rooms and get a snack and just say hi. And I knew that it would be like fun, but I didn't anticipate quite how big of a hit that would be. I mean, people love food, right? A little snack or a treat. And just, I think the combination of our smiling faces and music and a quick connection, all combined into what is now known as the Crushing It cart, has been so fun. And I had the thought when we were meeting as a staff, as a team, virtually during the school closure, I had the thought of like, this is a day where I would have had the Crushing It cart out. And it's been so long since we've had the Crushing It cart out. And so before we got started with the actual meeting and people were logging on, I played the same music that I typically play on the Crushing It cart, across our Google meeting. And people just, their faces, thank goodness to grid view, their faces just lit up across my screen. And then like lots of comments in the chat, we missed the Crushing It cart, but it was fun, just even the music that they associate with that fun thing that we've done to recognize was cool.
So apparently your counselor, Miss Doll,
Yeah.
which is an awesome name for a counselor, by the way. I found the picture of your Crushing It cart. So I did retweet it real quick while we're sitting here, and I'll also kind of link that into the notes here when I release the podcast. That is awesome.
It's so fun. It is so fun.
That is really cool. We did some things, from similar, but when we had Teacher Appreciation Week, myself and our curriculum director went out and did something very similar. But to be able to do that, like when your staff needs it, when you can kind of sense as a leader, like, hey, we need a little pick me up here. And the music, I mean, I love just everything you just described there. So if you're interested, on Twitter, I shared a picture. I'll share it again. And that's a cool idea. So thank you for sharing that. Really cool. And you mentioned that emotional bank account, Covey, right? You're talking about 7 habits and coming back to that. So I'm going to keep going here. What is one professional practice you utilize that you would recommend to others?
Yeah, so this is actually something I just started this past school year, had the opportunity to learn more about with some of my colleagues here in the district. And it's the concept of rounding in an educational setting. And it's based off of the Studer Group's work that I think first was done, in the business sector and maybe even the medical profession, that concept of rounding, and then has been brought, into the educational context. And really what it is a practice where you have an opportunity to sit down one-on-one with teachers and staff members and ask a common set of questions. And it's not a long list, but it's an opportunity to connect and to listen and to hear about the combination of what's going well in our building and also, what might we need to do to improve, or where could we get better next. And the final component in that series of questions is also a chance for that staff member to share with you another individual, basically like a shout out. Tell me about somebody else who has been especially helpful to you that I could recognize on your behalf. And so I took my learning and the work that, like I said, some of members of our administrative team have done together and developed a set of questions that I thought would work well here, that I at least wanted to try. And I can't speak enough about how rewarding that experience was. It was cut short due to the school closure, but I know for sure that that's a practice that I will continue moving forward, because the feedback that I was able to get or am able to get from staff members, and the opportunity to recognize and know about all of the great things that are happening it's just unparalleled with anything else. We, of course, still have opportunities for, meetings one-on-one that would be related to a formal observation process or an annual conference and goal work and those types of things. But this is a separate space for really valuable conversation.
I want to learn so much more about this. I'm going to ask you a couple follow-up questions.
Sure.
So, how long? So you got 60 staff, 60 certified staff. So how did you find? I mean, I would love to tell our principals, like, suggest it to them, but I also know time would be like the biggest barrier. How did you work those into your calendar? How long were they? How did you make that work? Can you describe that process?
You bet. I decided to try this first with our Lighthouse team, which is like our building leadership team. We're a Leader in Me Lighthouse school, hence the name Lighthouse team. But so I decided to try first with that group after I shared the work with them and my excitement for trying this out. They were all on board with being the first ones. And that team does have a representative from every grade level, our support certified staff, our special education staff, and our related arts staff. And so that was a great chance for me to do 12 of these meetings and get a feel, for how long it would take and what is going to be the best way to schedule this. And so I I decided to try, and they were game for this. I just sent them an email when it was, so I started with their team in a week. I looked at, our master schedule and my calendar and just sent an email and said, dear so-and-so, thanks for being willing to participate in rounding with me this week. I would like to meet with you on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Please reply only if that doesn't work for you. And then I made it really clear in there too that I would come to them. So it is, in many cases, it fell during a planning period or, an open time frame where their students were somewhere else. So you could have that private conversation, but I didn't want it to take any more time away from them. It sounds simple, but me showing up to you so that you can do things around that, I think made a difference. 10 to 15 minutes typically was long enough is what I found. And more often than not, the time that I sent out, people were like, that is great. And I also found it to be really helpful to send them the questions ahead of time so that there wasn't, you could decrease any feelings of like, will I be caught off guard? Because it's the opposite of that, right? This isn't a gotcha experience. This is a chance for me to get to know better your perspectives on this set of questions. And the things that I asked are, what's going well in your classroom, your team, or the building? What can we do better in our building to improve? Do you have all the tools, equipment, information, resources that you need to be doing your job? And then please tell me the name of an individual that's been especially helpful to you that I could recognize on your behalf. And then the final one is just, talk to me a little bit about how you're continuing to grow and what I can do for you. And so I would take notes and listen the majority of the time and really tried hard not to interject. It was just really a great listening opportunity for me. And it's interesting in your document of notes then to go back and be able to look at what you might be able to find for themes that emerge for things that are going well and things that we can do to improve. And then in that column of who they recognized, I would handwrite a note to that person. And, so if I had been rounding with one of your colleagues who mentioned something great that you had been doing lately or something you did that stood out to them, then you would get a note in your mailbox from me that's, dear Jared, in a recent meeting with so-and-so, she shared with me that you've done this lately and it really meant a lot on your team or to this person. Great job. And then I always, add something about a strength that I already knew about them, but how affirming it was to learn about this extra thing. So
I think you just gave the audience another culture hack, because I think that is awesome. What I'm probably going to do is just take this podcast, rewind it by 5 minutes and play it for our admin team and see if they will take that. Cause I think it makes so much sense. And I think, one of the biggest things you probably have to do is build trust, to open them up on that second question where they can really be honest with you about what we can do better. That would be something that I could see, barriers sometimes from principals wanting to do that is you've got to be vulnerable to ask that question and maybe hear that feedback that is not so pleasant to hear. Because is that, and you're not in your head, yes, I can, I'm sure there's some, it's never fun to hear criticism, and opening yourself up to that second question, it takes a lot of trust, and but it can be powerful if you take action on it.
It can be. And that's really what, much of their research and work talks about is, that therein lies a resource for identifying future professional growth and development, or maybe something really small that you could fix in a schedule or related to a resource or something like that you didn't realize needed improvement. And so there's that. And there's also one of the things they talk about too is if something comes up in that question, or the question about resources and tools, if something comes up that you that is outside of your control, maybe you even agree, yes, yes, I wish that we had more time for, PLC meetings or this or that, something that isn't within your control. You can still speak to those things, whether that's with a building leadership team or your whole team, or we wish we had more technology or whatever. Yep, I do too. And here's the plan for what we have been able to add recently and what we're going to be adding, and it just, I think, adds to the opportunities that you have to be transparent as well, even if there's something that you can't do right now. You could still address those things.
Okay. That was my last question on the, I mean, we could talk about this for 20 minutes. I think it's an
Sure.
awesome idea. You mentioned a resource. Is there a book or a resource or something that we could
There
search
is.
for or purchase?
Yes, there is. And I'm going to send that to you afterwards because I don't have it in front of me and I don't want to get the name wrong.
Sure, sure. Oh, that would be great. I think it is well worth the time, I believe. And we do, my wig for this year, wildly important goal, and I'm looking at my scoreboard up there, was to do one-on-one meetings with with all my direct reports. But I think having those one-on-one conversations, it's very rare to find people who are, you would think a lot of people would do it, but I have not found many people who do those conversations. So, and actually do something about it. So very, very cool. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to combine 5 and 6. So 5 and 6 and 7. So it's about new habits, daily routines, tricks and tips. So, you mentioned earlier about, it seems like you eat healthy, you're on the go, you've got kids going every direction in the morning. So do you have a daily routine, habits, anything that you can pass along that could help leaders manage this work-life balance?
Right. I think that weekly planning and staying focused on what Stephen Covey refers to as Q2 or quadrant 2 are probably my two biggest, tips and tricks for having a routine and being as effective as possible, both, professionally and personally. And so that practice of planning for the week ahead of time, for me, I do that on Sunday, and I do that personally and professionally. And I have a week at a glance that, goes out to our whole team on Sunday, that outlines things that are going on, important announcements and reminders. And as I'm building that, I'm also capturing for myself and wrapping my head around what are my big rocks this week? What are the things that are coming up at a week's glance versus just day by day? And that seems to be really helpful. And in getting feedback from our staff, I think framing it up a week at a time, in addition to, we have a shared building calendar and other things as well, but I think that really helps us head into the week with a clear plan, and me as an individual know what those things are. I do that for home as well. And then the routine of, starting your day early and being able to take care of responsibilities at home, and then get to work and know that you're headed into the day with as much of a chance as possible of being able to operate out of quadrant 2. And so that's where you're, making time and spending time on the things that are highly important, but they're not urgent. Sometimes I think there's a little bit of confusion in leadership that, if your quadrant 1 is really that area it's really important, but it's also really urgent. And that is probably like a vacuum. You could get stuck there forever if you're not careful. And ideally, to be most effective, you want to spend your time on the things that are most important, but they're not urgent. That way you're not constantly living with what I call the paper bag feeling. Like, I can't catch up. I can't catch myself in the day. And so that's why you don't want to leave yourself with like, an issue from the day before that you haven't resolved or spent time on or budgeted time in the next day to follow up first thing, when a student or a teacher arrives. You want to plan those things out as much as possible, because inevitably there are going to be some urgent things that come your way in a building, day to day, and you need to be able to respond to those, but not let it hijack the entire day. I can't speak enough about how much, I use my calendar. My secretary is extremely helpful in holding me accountable to that. So if I put something on there, sometimes it's actual meetings, and sometimes it's placeholders too. And we have a great relationship. And so she's really good at saying like, and aren't you headed soon to do, X, or I saw you were going to do this thing, with students. Can I set something up for that? Or can I, so I think just planning helps us be most effective. And then it also allows us to respond to those things that need our immediate attention. Even in those moments, allowing yourself the opportunity to create just a little bit of space between the stimulus and the response, that thing, that email or that phone call or that incident. While it might be urgent, most of the time you can still take a moment to provide a little space, think about the best, course of action, and then start taking action.
So on Sunday when you're planning, is
Mm-hmm.
this a journal you have? Is this something electronic, or what does that look like?
Yeah, Google Calendar, and it's all electronic. So Google Calendar, would be those actual scheduled, time and date based items. I keep a separate list also on my desktop of my laptop that has, other important things that I know I want to address in, that weekly planning and communication. And then for the past, oh gosh, I don't know, 6 or 7 years, it's been published and housed in a blog format. But our district is moving to a new website, so I'm not sure how much longer that blog will exist as it currently does, but it's a staff-only blog site that they have that they can access. And I always send a quick email when it's updated on Sunday, reminding people to log in, check it out, and another little, probably another little message or note from me, but then they can go back to that throughout the week. And probably this would be a hack. Probably a spot where they revisit it most is our secretary takes that and prints it out and hangs those in the staff restrooms. So people reread and revisit those important things. But I'm not big on like lots and lots of emails, individual emails to the whole staff all week long. If at all possible, I want to try to, minimize the different places that people have to go to get information. And so trying to keep that housed in one spot with links or whatever is needed to make it most user friendly has worked really well for me.
That's awesome. You caught my ear when you said blog. I do some blog. It's just, I feel like it's kind of fun to do that and helpful. Is that something you mentioned 6 or 7 years ago? That's something that you started doing. Is that something you did on your own? Is that a district expectation? I'm kind of curious, just learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, the district, website included this new capability, so that part was, learning about that at a district level. Like we now have the capability to, house information in a blog, and teachers have blogs, and oh, hey, principals, you could have a blog too, and yours would be, not all public access, but it could be password protected for staff, and you could house some information there. And so from there, there were some basics of, hey, set yours up and get your get your name and info on there. And if you want to like post your master schedule or something like that, you could, to try it out. But the weekly information, I had previously been sending that through like old school email. And so it seemed like a nice place to transition, and house that in a spot that you could go back to. And, it offers a few more capabilities with linking and that. So there are quite a few of my teammates that have something similar in place, but it's not like mine is called Week at a Glance. People call it different things or include different information, and it's not a have to, but it has worked well.
Okay, awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're at about 50 minutes right now. This has been a great interview. You've given us some awesome things to think about. I'm going to let you choose. I got two questions left. One is one commonly held belief in education that you disagree with. And the other is, what is the single coolest goosebumps moment you've had as a school leader? So you choose one of those,
Okay.
and you take it from there.
Well, I'm probably going to skip to the goosebumps, because I think that my answer about a belief that I disagree with might have been a little bit redundant for listeners that had tuned in to Dr. Buck just a week or two ago. So, um, yeah, goosebumps moments in 12 years, it's hard to narrow down to just one. Um, so I think what I'll do is I'm going to share goosebumps, two moments that have the same message or the same reason, I think, for causing goosebumps. And so um, as I mentioned before, we're a Leader in Me lighthouse school, and have been on that journey since 2013, and really believe that everyone possesses leadership potential. And a few years ago, I watched a student of ours who has had an IEP for a variety of different goal areas for many years, including speech and communication goal, um, apply for a job on our student leadership board to do the daily announcements for the whole school, be selected for that job, practice those announcements, and give a one page presentation over our intercom system of daily announcements in front of, so to say, the whole school. Had known this student since like age 3, as a part of our preschool special education program, and I just had goosebumps because I was so proud of him, that for obvious reasons, right? Because I was so proud of him, but also because the work that we're doing was affirmed for me in that moment. Had we left it up to adult decisions only, either A, an adult would still be doing those announcements, right? Or B, we would have just picked students, based on our own thoughts and ideas about who might want to do that, or who might, do a nice job with that. And we might have missed him in that process. And instead, this idea of empowering everyone, to think about their leadership potential, their special gifts, and provide avenues for using those gifts, like a job board and applications and opportunities around your school. We found something in him, and he did the announcements and even spoke at an all school assembly after that. We found something in him that we might not have otherwise found. And just this past winter, I watched him perform in the middle school show choir, and again had this feeling of like, oh, I'm so glad that we got to be a part of that, and I can't wait to see what he does next. But goosebumps. And I think my other example of that same feeling for those same reasons is related to the first time that somebody asked me about how our school does something, a particular tradition that we have, and I didn't have the answer. And it made me smile because the answer was going to be easily accessed, but that answer and information lives with one of our teacher action teams, and not with me. And again, I think everybody on our team serves on an action team that they've chosen, and those action teams are built around implementation of a variety of things that help us to continue to tend to our leadership, our culture, and our academics, as it relates to the leader in me. And that was amazing. That sounds funny. And I'm certainly not saying that I don't know anything about what's going on, but the particulars I didn't know and I didn't have. And I had that moment of like, that's amazing. I shouldn't have all of that information. If you've truly empowered people to use their gifts, their strengths, and to lead and serve, that's what you want. If I were to leave tomorrow, which I'm not planning on, but if I were to leave tomorrow, all of these things would continue to be what they are. Waukee Elementary would be what it is, because of all of the great people doing these things. And so that kind of brings me full circle back to, we talked about at the beginning that, if you really assemble the right people, and build on their strengths and empower individuals and teams to lead and to serve, the possibilities are endless.
Wow. I got nothing. I mean, I got so much I could ask. I got job boards. I've got action teams. I've got Lighthouse School. Like there's so much that I would love to follow up with you on, but that was a great way to end. So I was kind of getting goosebumps there a little bit too, especially when you're talking about the student reading those announcements. I mean, that's kind of what we live for in education is pushing kids beyond their comfort zone and helping them reach their potential. And gosh, I'm pulling for that student big time here to do great things. And
Yep.
sounds amazing. So that was outstanding. Is there anything else that you want to share before we get going here?
I think the last thing that I would say would just be that I could speak for a really long time yet about all of the amazing people that I get to do this work with each and every day. And so I probably would just want to end with that. We say, we use the abbreviation WE for Waukee Elementary, and then we play off of we are, and most recently, we've talked about us being a family. We really are a family. It feels that way in our building. It feels that way in our community. And I can't say enough about the amazing people that I work with each and every day.
Well, you said full circle, right? Finding the right people, full circle. So, well, hey, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. Again, if you're listening, that was Nicole Johnson, Waukee Elementary Principal. I don't think there's any way you could come away from listening to these last 57-ish minutes and not have come away with at least one new idea. And that's the point of the show. And thanks again, and have a great summer, and we'll be in touch, okay?
Thank you so much for the opportunity.